In this video, we're digging into a development battle that's drawing county-wide attention and intense pushback from environmental groups, civic associations, and residents of Belmont Bay in Woodbridge. Miller and Smith is asking the Prince William County Planning Commission and ultimately the Board of County Supervisors to approve a rezoning and special use permit that would allow construction of 348 new townhomes on the former Belmont Bay golf course property. Much of that land sits directly beside the Occoquan Bay National Wildlife Refuge, one of the most important bird migration corridors on the East Coast and home to more than 257 documented species, including nesting bald eagles. Opponents argue that the project would shrink the protective buffer between new development and the federal refuge just 50 feet, reducing it to 50 feet, far less than the 300-foot buffer recommended by refuge managers, and smaller than the 100-foot compromise supported by local HOAs and conservation groups. They're also raising questions about stormwater runoff, PCBs, endangered species disruption, and whether the proposal matches the long-promised vision for the Belmont Bay waterfront. This all comes as the Prince William County Planning Commission prepares to vote on the project at its December 10th meeting. To help us understand what's at stake and why so many organizations are lining up against this proposal, today we are joined by Rob Hartwell, president of the Concerned Citizens United for Belmont Bay. Rob, thanks for coming on with us today.
Thanks, Uriah. Glad to be here.
Well, let's start with the basics. When we look at this project, what concerns you most about this rezoning request, and why do you believe Belmont Bay is the wrong place for another 348 townhomes?
Well, when Belmont Bay was envisioned as a community, citizens from all over Prince William, really notable citizens, Clancy McQuigg, Jack Kamachayan, Linda Silverstrand, people that were involved in planning for the community, we're not so sure Belmont Bay should have the kind of intense development that it has. But as a compromise, they said, well, if you're building a golf course and you're going to have the golf course in between the development and the National Wildlife Refuge, what used to be the Harry Diamond Laboratory and was transferred to the National Wildlife Service, that if you're going to build that in kind of intensive development, if you have a golf course in between it and the development, then that's a natural buffer and it'll be okay. Supervisor Margaret Franklin got together with some of the developers and decided that in a previous version, they wanted to build 1,200 and some new homes, and we're glad they pulled back on that and didn't do it. And we thought 348 was a better number, and the reduced density might be a better fit. But then she rezoned part of that golf course along the National Wildlife Refuge, or she planned in the comprehensive plan to rezone it, over the objections of Belmont Bay Homeowners Association, Riverbend Estates, all the local civic associations opposed it. And she went ahead and did it anyway. And now it's coming for a vote before the Prince William County Planning Commission. It's the developer wants to put hundreds of townhomes immediately adjacent to the National Wildlife Refuge, which encompasses a lot of wetlands, 3 bald eagles nests, possible endangered bat species that have been sound recorded in the vicinity, and all sorts of wildlife. And the purposes of a National Wildlife Refuge it's a refuge. It's intended to buffer surrounding development and protect the wildlife by any means necessary. And, they have a 1,000-foot ceiling or 2,000 feet for planes flying overhead and to keep helicopters away from it. Well, they ought to have at least 2,000 feet to the side. And we've compromised because we think the developers, I think, tried to do a pretty good job. But when that land was rezoned next to the National Wildlife Refuge, it was just the wrong place for townhouses.
Well, we're speaking about feed here. One of the biggest points of contention is the proposed 50-foot buffer next to the wildlife refuge. So can you explain why that buffer size is such a critical issue for residents and environmental groups?
Yeah. And the environmental groups have come a long way. The 300 feet is the best practices, according to the National Wildlife Refuge, the previous manager that was there. Because of budget cuts, they don't have a manager there right now sitting in the refuge office. 50 feet basically takes out a natural line of trees and a natural vegetated buffer already between the community and the golf course and the wildlife refuge. If you put in, just move it back 50 feet to 100 feet, then that natural tree line will stay in place. So there's a natural buffer already there, and they're proposing to take down all the trees. And on the southern side, on the Taylor Point side, next, right immediately adjacent to the Occoquan River, there's some thick trees there. I was over there this morning. Bald eagle was in one of the trees. Some buzzards and some other wildlife are there. It's nesting areas for great horned owls, barred owls. A lot of special wildlife and birds are in that section. And that whole tree line buffer area and the neighborhood golf course country club that's still there servicing the neighborhood and having weddings and such, it's going to be torn down for townhomes. Just not the right place for the development.
Now, the country club, the building, I believe it used to be called, or may still be called, the Osprey. That is still there. We went to a public meeting there not too long ago for a separate project for transportation. But the golf course is no longer being used, and so we have seen the Belmont Bay, which really is a gem tucked away in Woodbridge. It is at the confluence of the Potomac and Occoquan rivers, and we have seen going back to the early 2000s, where this was going to be a massive town center with not only housing but business and office and retail shops, walkable streets, and we've seen the plans over the years change. And to include that golf course that's no longer in use, but George Mason has a science center there. The university built a science center in this environmentally sensitive area. So there is, I can see there's frustration over how the proposal line or doesn't align with the original Belmont Bay plan from 1999 and the more recent North Woodbridge small area plan. So how has the community's vision changed, and how does this project, the addition of these additional townhomes, differ from what residents were originally promised at Belmont Bay?
Well, a couple of points. Actually, on one point, they had a hotel plan for that corner, and it was supposed to be an environmental getaway, a destination hotel for the environment. And the Carruthers family that built the development, friends of mine, I like the Carruthers quite a bit. They envisioned this community, and I think it was the vision for the community was a good one. Over time, they found out that, well, commercial businesses didn't want to move here. They had a restaurant here at the Ospreys that was the golf course clubhouse that ultimately they had to close because they were losing substantial money on it. Because of the traffic problems in Woodbridge, because of, I-95 and the confluence of all the traffic, the golf course ended up closing too. It economically wasn't feasible for this corner. And in a way, since most of the people moved into the community for the golf course and for the environment and for the nature, all of a sudden, not having that hotel complex on the corner was a good thing. However, replacing that with townhomes, which is much more intensive development and many more people coming to that stretch all along the refuge, just doesn't make sense. There were other areas in the community and other areas on the golf course that could have held a little bit more development. That would have been a better idea. I'm a former planning commissioner from Fairfax County, and I pay very close attention to the developments that are going in along the waterways and next to our precious natural resources. The other issue really is one of what about the people that moved here and lived here. The area where they're planning these townhouses was never planned for townhouses. The northern area wasn't planned for anything. It was an open space and a golf course. People bought in here, and they bought Miller and Smith, the company's townhomes, when they added additional townhomes in here on portion of the golf course. People bought those properties because they had an unobstructed view of the National Wildlife Refuge and of all the wildlife and the birds that were going through, and of the golf course. And now townhouses are planned in between them with a road in their front yard, a road in their backyard, and a whole row of townhouses next to the refuge. So it's very unfair to the residents of Beacon Park Townhomes, and they're extremely upset about it. And their townhome values are dropping significantly.
Well, the Planning Commission in Prince William County will meet this Wednesday, December 10th. What are you going to ask of them, and what do you want residents to know if in case they want to get involved?
Well, we have the largest coalition of civic groups and environmental groups, I think, to ever take on an issue in the county, other than possibly the data centers, and where there was some success in curtailing some of that development in the western part of the county. We're urging citizens to care about the environment, that care about the development process, that don't believe townhomes should be zoned immediately adjacent to a national wildlife refuge, to come out to the hearing, to listen to it, to get up and speak. You can come out there at 6 o'clock and sign up to speak, and the Planning Commission will hear your concerns. And we expect to have a good turnout and good crowd from the civic and environmental groups that are here. And I'll be there, and my wife will be there, and a lot of members from our community will be there as well.
Rob Hartwell is the president of Concerned Citizens United for Belmont Bay. Rob, thanks for coming on with us today.
Thank you, Uri. Take care.
And that is this PLN podcast. If you want more local news, be sure to go to PotomacLocal.com, where we will be covering this issue as it unfolds later this week at the Planning Commission. And if you want more video, more local news on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to us there. Go to youtube.com/PotomacLocal to become our next YouTube subscriber. We can't wait to have you, as we are on our way to 1,000 YouTube subscribers. We want you to be our next subscriber. Take care, and we'll see you soon.